Greetings and salutations. My name is Charles, and this is the 831 Journey. In this video, we're going to continue working through Philippians 1 9 through 11. And if you didn't already catch the video where we're doing observation of the passage, catch that. I'll try to put a card up in the corner or link in the description. And once you've seen that, the next step after we make observations of the passage is to go in and do a mechanical layout of the passage. And so if observation is asking, what does the passage say? A mechanical layout is a way of asking, how does the passage flow? And this is still going to be kind of an introductory sort of thing. It's initial look at the passage to try to better understand what's being communicated, but we're still not in the phase of actually trying to interpret the passage. So we may still have some questions. We may still leave some things somewhat open-ended, but again, we're trying to lay that foundation so that when we do start to do the real heavy lifting of interpretation, we've got some ideas about what the passage is communicating. And so just like with observation, you can do this on a sheet of paper. You can do it in a word processor. I'm using the notes function in Logos Bible software to work with this because I like being able to track it alongside my passage in my preferred translation, which in this case is the ESV. And so I've gone ahead and copied my passage into a note here, and I've got it laid out. And so what I'm going to do is start to look at the passage and see what are the different phrases and clauses that Paul is using to communicate his idea and how are they related to one another. And so all I'm doing as I work through this is I'm going to just simply use my enter key on my keyboard and the tab key on my keyboard to start aligning different sections underneath one another based on my initial take on what are likely relationships between those different phrases. So easiest way to understand it is to watch it happen. So let's dive right in. Again, this is Philippians 1 9 through 11, which says, "And it is my prayer that your love may abound more and more with knowledge and all discernment, so that you may approve what is excellent, and so be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God." And so we'll start with this idea. The first clause or first kind of phrase we see is Paul says, "And it is my prayer." And then he says that, which usually that is one of those kind of words that should trigger in your mind, like, okay, he's about to have another idea that he's introducing that's going to be related to the first one. And so he says, "It is my prayer." What is his prayer? His prayer is that your love may abound more and more. And so again, I'm looking going, okay, that your love may abound. And then more and more is kind of a descriptor of abound is what it looks like. It could be, there's not really anything else that stands out to me as where it could be tied in. I mean, you want to consider, okay, before I jump to conclusions about what this describer, like an adjective or an adverb, is describing, are there more than one? In this case, what I'm looking at is that your love may abound more and more, and then with knowledge and all discernment. And so here I have the question of, okay, is with knowledge and all discernment describing the love, or is with knowledge and all discernment describing abound? And so I'm going to take an initial guess here and say that it is the love that is noted and described as being with knowledge and all discernment, rather than the way that the love is abounding. But at the same time, it's worth keeping in mind when I'm thinking about the passage that it could very well be that the with knowledge and all discernment is describing how that love is actually abounding more so than it's describing the love itself. And so I've got with knowledge and all discernment, and then I've got this idea of so that, and so we're kicking that down, and love may abound so that you may approve what? Approve what is excellent, where what is excellent is describing what may be approved. And then we've got, and so be pure and blameless for the day of Christ. And so the and is going to be tied back in with the so that what? You may approve what is excellent, and with that, so be pure and blameless so that you may approve and so be, and we'll put it right there, pure and blameless, when or how or what, for the day of Christ. Now, and I realize, we're starting to kick things over a little bit, but it is helpful as we think about this to lay it out this way. At the same time, so be pure and blameless for the day of Christ. And we got a comma here, which, the punctuation in the English translation is not derived from the Greek originally. There wasn't that same punctuation, but the translators are doing the punctuation to try to help us understand as they best understand it themselves what's going on. And so we're going to take that, filled with the fruit of righteousness, so be pure and blameless for the day of Christ. And then just the same way that they are to be, I think probably the most likely place it's going to go is to align with that in the idea that they are to be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, and they are to be filled with the fruit of righteousness. And then we see a description of the fruit of righteousness by the way he says that comes through Jesus Christ. So kicking that over, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ. And then here's one of the questions we noted in the observation stage. We've got this idea that it's to the praise and glory of God. And the question is whether they are filled to the fruit of righteousness, to the glory and praise of God, or if it's that everything in the passage is ultimately to the praise and glory and the glory and praise of God. And so there's a couple ways I can go with this. And I think as I'm looking at this, and then I'll reserve the right to change my mind as I think about it more, but an initial take just to get something down is that I'm inclined to think that part of this is ultimately that his prayer is that their love may abound to the glory and praise of God. That all of this is ultimately pointing to this hope that Paul has that the change that he's praying for in the Philippian believers will ultimately redound to the praise and glory of God. And again, when we get into the interpretation stage, part of what we'll want to do is look at that and go, okay, is that the best way to think about it? Or is to the glory and praise of God a phrase that's actually describing something else in the passage? But for now, I'm going to start with this assessment that this phrase here, to the glory and praise of God, is really a kind of summation of everything else that's in the passage preceding it. And so as you look at this, it's helpful to think about what we're looking at here and understand that part of why we're doing this is we do get the benefit now. If we can take a look and go, okay, Paul's praying that their love may abound more and more, knowledge and all discernment. And then we get this further idea of this is what he's praying. And then the purpose of his praying, so that you get a turn with so that you may approve what is excellent and be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, which is characterized by being filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and praise of God. And so if I'm thinking about this passage, and again, as I do interpretation, I might shift in my ideas about this and what I think Paul's communicating, but in some ways it helps me to see what is he praying for, and then why does he pray that, and what is his ultimate hope for his prayer. That's just an initial take on it. Doing interpretation, I may come and land on something different, but this helps me to kind of think about the different portions of this passage. And so I might even look at something like this and just as kind of an initial take, go, okay, let me work with some coloration here to say, okay, that's one idea. And then I think I've got a little bit different other idea here. And then again, I might change my mind and decide that, okay, the glory and praise of God is talking about this section here, but my initial take is that I think it's talking about something else. But now I've kind of got this passage already, an initial idea of how is this passage broken down, helping me think through it and ultimately pointing me toward how I'm going to work toward interpretation and potentially like what's going on here? What are the conclusions that I'll draw and the application that comes with it? So if you got questions, put them in the comments below. At the same time, please feel free to like this if it was helpful for you, and so that it may potentially be brought up as a video that others see. Subscribe for future content as well. And I look forward to working with all of you on the next video as we continue working through Philippians 1, 9 through 11.